All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Supply Chain Unchained, the podcast by Navia, where we talk about freight news, insights, and everything going on in the supply chain, all the way from forwarding right down to final mile fulfillment. Today's episode, I'm joined by Simon Borg, the CEO and founder of Navia, and Ruben Huber, the founder and director of OceanX Networks, live from a very topical place. Today we're going to be talking about AI and its development in the freight forwarding industry. This is going to be a two-part episode. So part one, we're going to be talking about how AI is going to be powering freight forwarding in the short term, in the next, say, 18 months, and perhaps how the industry is reacting. Part two, we're going to get into that longer term thinking of where do humans fit into an AI powered supply chain, a futuristic supply chain backed by AI. Right. So without further ado, I will leave it to these two gentlemen to discuss. So guys, the first thing I want to talk about is obviously in that short term, AI, it's not really a future thing. It's here and now. It's happening as we speak. Maybe you can both talk about what you see happening in the short term from an operational perspective and the gains that are there to be made now.
For sure. Thanks, Greg. Maybe I'll kick it off, Ruben, and then you can hand over because you are at a conference very specific to this topic. From a here and now perspective, I mean, as a business, we've adopted AI quite extensively across the business in lots of facets of our operational capabilities. So at the moment, we're using it a lot for marketing, obviously, is a one. We're doing a lot of internal training as well, so on how to effectively use AI. And I think that's probably the biggest point I'd like to make on what AI is here and now. There's a couple of key points is make sure you are using it as it should be. It's not a Google search function, although it does do search fine. Certainly do a lot of work around, we've done a lot of work around prompting, particularly educating people on how to effectively get the most out of prompting, educating people on the different models available for the different tasks that we do each day. We're seeing it currently, so if we're talking current state, we see it as a force multiplier, which I'm sure everyone would have heard already. You know, our small, medium-sized business is able to compete at a speed and a scale that we were not able to previously. The other key point, I think, is making sure you take the time to understand what is happening, but not just reading the headlines and the topical side of AI. Just really understand how it works. Even if you're not a technical-minded person, watch some YouTube videos, seek out as much information as you can, just to get a clear understanding of what's coming.
Yeah.
We'll talk about what's going to happen to the industry in post 18 months. But what we're seeing today, I mean, if you think about our industry from a very granular point of view, particularly if you've come out of operations, our business actually works on a series of linked events. Now, if you've got a minor understanding of, for example, agentic AI, it lends itself very, very neatly to
What we do.
Succinct events, correct.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be a place for very, very high level thinking, critical thinking, exception management. But from an operational point of view, from an efficiency point of view, supply chain, the word itself is, a chain is a series of concentric circles effectively that are linked together. AI lends itself to all of those functions really easily. So I guess to bring the conversation back a little bit again here and now on what we're doing, very much education and company-wide education, top to bottom type education, making sure the topic's not taboo. I've seen a lot of companies where everyone's that, you would be kidding yourself if you think your staff are not using AI, but your staff are not using it correctly or safely.
Yeah.
So the safety, privacy of data, security, they're paramount. Making sure you understand how that works in an AI realm, and then really finding that sweet spot to leverage that into your business. And again, I look at it literally as force multiplying. What I was able to do with our set of staff 12 months ago compared to what we're able to do now, literally 10x. And look, we are blessed that we have a very well-resourced technology team within the business. But that doesn't mean it's too late for anyone as well. If you're waking up today and you're seeing the 500 messages on LinkedIn proclaiming the end of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's no need to turn off LinkedIn for a bit and just go and do some reading.
I like that advice.
Absolutely.
I like that advice. So educate yourself.
Very
Exactly.
much. Very
It's
much.
about education, really. Just to give you some background, I'm in Shanghai here. I'm sitting in the offices of OneAIX, which is one of the market leaders in AI solutions in China. Which is also an interesting fact here is really in China, AI is on a very high agenda since DeepSeek and since Manus. They're really leading the sector in a few fields, and it's something we also have to get used to. So they're talking a lot about using these tools in their internationalization processes and everything. So it's been quite eye-opening so far to be here. And to come to our subject, I think you said it very nicely. The awareness subject is the key at the moment. We need to get people aware. We need to have an open culture for it where we say, hey, this is not cheating, okay? If there is a better hammer, you have to use the better hammer, okay? There is no question about it. And if I just think about a junior customer service employee or someone who doesn't dare to ask their supervisor or doesn't ask to dare their colleague because they don't want to look stupid or whatever, with these kind of team bots or support bots inside your organization that know all the processes, that know all the training data, you can already answer a lot of questions. And if each of your employees can get 5 or 10% better, that's an easy win, and that costs you almost nothing. So that's certainly one thing on the short term. And as you mentioned, the training part is super, super important. There is a lot of different definitions out there for AI. You have people that do online tools and think this is AI. It is not, okay? So it's really about sometimes not just an entry tool. It's more than that. And people have to try things out. There's a lot of free material out there, as you said. Even if you look at IBM has a lot of cool lectures and everybody, so you can get a basic understanding of how things work. And maybe also to add is that a lot of our jobs are based on actually managing information, okay? Obtaining information from our vendors, getting updates, then more or less manipulating them and making updates to our customers, taking action on certain things. So a very high part of our operational day-to-day jobs is communication. And AI is just amazing in that. Not only can it now understand context and LLMs really understand what is the content in a message and so on, but it can also, on the other hand, take action from these information, update systems and things like that. So there is already quite something going on. And we were talking about that in the past, right? We always said there is an efficiency challenge in this industry where we need to do more with less, where we need to actually really be operationally very efficient, and AI can help us with that. So we can really improve our game. We can do more with less. We also have, to just take one example for me, is always quotations. We get more and more inquiries. The customers use procurement tools, use tender processes. The quoting cycles have come down to weekly, sometimes daily. So it's not just once a month a tender or once a quarter. It's a lot. And there is just, when you fight with humans against bots, we will never win that race. You will spend a lot of time and a lot of cost for people to do that, and you won't win.
I like what you mentioned. Both of you actually have mentioned something which I hadn't anticipated this conversation going, but education and making people not scared actually comes before. You can't actually build on, we're going to change our operations until you get everyone on board with, hey, we actually are okay with AI. It's not a dirty word. It's not taboo. Let's go ahead and then after we've done that, go and progress further. I wanted to touch on something you said there, Ruben. You mentioned that AI is not just online tools and LLMs. Is there anything that maybe you've seen at the conference that's above an LLM or something different that maybe people should be aware of in freight forwarding that's, not just that?
Here some people have an interesting approach where they say, how do we do this kind of, also the change process inside the organization differently? And the guys here, we just had a very interesting meeting with the CEO and their product manager. They try to actually build standardized bots for certain tasks inside the organization, that are already pre-configured, that know, for example, documentation processes or that no quotation processes that just link to the respective tools in your organization, and that can you click fast. What probably we see that everywhere. You guys are always a bit ahead of the curve, but as you know, we have in the network very different organizations. We have from the front end, which would be the Navia team probably, to some laggards that still work very traditionally. So you have very different kind of digital maturization levels inside among the members. And It's also that probably since ChatGPT came out in end of 2023, we had a lot of people talking about AI, but very little implementation, so actually making use of it is still very limited. So everybody talks, but nobody actually does anything and deploys it, right?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Simon, maybe you can touch on this one. So in terms of freight forwarding and supply chain, where do you think we're at? Obviously, Navia is a forward-thinking company. Where do you think we are in compared to the rest of the industry, and as an industry as well?
As an industry against other industries?
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting take because it's a bit of a trigger for me. You'll often hear people having a go, I guess, at our industry for being way behind technology deployment, or what most people forget though. Okay, maybe on the front side, and Ruben and I have had multiple conversations about this over the years. Maybe on the front side for the customer, but by inherently our business has to be efficient. It's actually, your company won't survive if you're not. It's as simple as that. We're the bottom end of the margin, at the margin tail. We are constantly pushed. But we have to offer lots of value adds. It's just part of being in the game. But you also have to be cost effective for your customers because they've got their own concerns, right? So where we are is, it's just, I just see it always as progression. Now, I've looked at AI since I want to say we used our first platform in about 2017. Was when we were first starting to look at platforms in AI, and what it's come to today is, obviously another world. But I think where it is today is where it should be today. Like the journey to get here is where we should be today. It's natural. We can't have sped it up. We can't have slowed it down. Where it gets deployed into our industry is going to be very much dependent on the industry now and how you use it. Now, I've always seen technology as it's almost like art, the deployment of technology. Yeah, it's some people's take on how to deploy technology versus other people's take on how to deploy technology is where you can make and break companies, and also where you can find your competitive advantage. How you frame your technology offering, and that's both internal and external. How you frame your technology offering will shape our industry. And now, there's a lot of talk about the technology-driven freight forwarders that have come, whether they've been startups and, heavily funded. That's their angle. Whether it works or not is not necessarily my problem or someone else's problem. It's their problem. But I do think, where we are as an industry today, there's companies, I've seen a lot of talk coming out of CH Robinson, actually. You look at some of the work they've done, particularly in their brokerage side of the business. They're a large company doing some phenomenal stuff, groundbreaking stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I look at that again, and you look at a business like CH Robinson, and I just see it's par for course. It's in their DNA. It's part of their trajectory, and it's part of a path they're on. And actually, Ruben touched on something earlier when he mentioned hammer.
Yeah.
One thing we've got to be careful of is the concept of the golden hammer.
Yeah.
Is not the only solution here.
For sure not.
If you've got, if you haven't worked out how to deploy technology already, then AI is not going to fix that problem.
Yeah,
that's still a foundation. Yeah.
I'm always saying, the key word here is, from my view, is always orchestration. Okay, we need to orchestrate our processes, technology with it, and our people in order to be more competitive. You said it earlier, it's a competitive advantage that you build out of these ingredients, and the game is changing. And maybe to do the link to the two examples, one is, of course, how do we compare to other industries? I have the feeling we are not doing too bad, because the other industries also talk a lot about AI, but do little so far. Let's say white-collar businesses, they have the same challenge. And then on the other hand, in our industry, the pressure is on. Of course, gross profit margins in our sector have gone up since COVID, but they are coming down, and they are coming down rapidly. And we need to up our speed, and we need to actually reduce our cost per shipment, or our cost per TU. If you just, Kühne + Nagel just came out this week with their results, and their cost per TU are still 1/3 higher than they used to be in 2019. Okay, so efficiency doesn't really go there. So people like DSV or others are eating their lunch.
Yeah, agreed totally.
I like that. So basically it's not just the tool, but it's how you use it is the art form, almost like a recipe or a flow
Yeah, it must
whatever
become part of your culture. I mean, this is what we said also before when we talked together. I mean, the key thing is we have to experiment. We have to also have people open to it. I mean, we have in this industry certainly had a lot of let's call it dodged kind of digitalization processes since 2012. We maybe did some things that went slow or that followed certain business to consumer basics which do not really apply to the industry. We have no perfect standards. We have a lot of issues on the digitalization journey. And you have inside your organization always two kinds of people: those that are afraid of change and those who are waiting for change. They always say, where are these great new tools coming that you always promise us? And they're still not there. And a company like yours probably has more of the latter, but the issue is exactly that. I mean, we need to use these tools to deliver finally, right?
I like that. The theme of this has been, from what I'm hearing, getting people on board with AI and getting them educated about AI. So if you're talking to supply chain managers, other freight forwarders, other supply chain companies out there, what's, I guess, maybe one piece of advice you'd each give to help them adopt?
That's a loaded question depending on who I'm speaking to.
Yeah.
Look, I think there's different answers for different people. To be honest, I mean, if you were waking up, if you repose a question as, if I woke up today and I had no understanding of AI and I was running a company, what should I do?
Yeah.
And what you should do first is educate yourself, but start openly talking about it. I just think, because you've got to think of it, and I'm talking from a leadership point of view in a company, you've got to remember our people are reading news articles that are quite frightening as well.
Totally, yeah.
But you've got to remind them as well, and back to the point I made earlier, that the supply chain industry, the freight industry, has always been run leanly. And we've always run it at very fine edges. And, it'd be fair to say most people that work in an operations role in our industry are probably over capacity most of the time. So the way we can frame this is that, again, this force multiplier effect where, hey, maybe I'm not over capacity and I can do more high value work for my customer. Maybe I can spend time understanding the data and the data that comes out of supply chain more, and I can provide more meaningful insights to my customer. I can become that expert. So if I was fresh, I would have open conversations with my staff. My staff probably know more about this topic than I do, and I would 100% educate myself. If your company, look, I just think open conversation, and then making sure you're finding the talent within your business as well. You will find talent within your business that has already been experimenting, because it's in human nature. Has already been experimenting in this space. You'll find, and we're the same. Most of our tech team has come out of operations role, and all it's been is they've had an aptitude to tinker effectively, and then we give them a bit of a pathway and push them into a direction. But you will find that you've got staff already, you've got team members already that have got a very, very high, strong opinion on what's happening. Speak to them, like literally speak to them. And then from there, you'll find, like, Ruben mentioned, I'm sure Ruben will talk about this more, but there's plenty of platforms off the shelf that you can tap into as well, that you can also gain the expertise from. If you've got something specific, but make sure you've got specific goals on what you're trying to deploy.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Thanks,
it. There is a
Simon.
lot of tools out there already. There is, I think, the experimentation part is really the important one, to encourage people also to try things out. A lot of the use cases and a lot of how AI will shape our industry are not clear yet. So it's really also about staff raising their hand and say, hey, here is some part of the process that I touch 2 times every day or whatever, and how can we use AI to change that? And some people maybe have some use cases where they played around with it in their private life and where they familiarize themselves. These kind of things matter, no question. That's maybe something for a more strategic discussion that we might have another day, where we say, okay, what is actually the advantage of humans? Okay, responding to a lot of quote inquiries, filling in tender sheets, that is not where human talent is best used. I mean, we have one advantage over AI, and that is we have empathy. We can build relationships, we can build trust, we can establish confidence with customers. So we need to focus on that interface, on actually dealing with clients, following up those inquiries that really matter, where there is really opportunities out there. And today oft we are being driven by the process instead of actually being proactive and being able to think about how can we serve our customers better.
That's probably the key point.
Yeah,
literally in that last sentence, a key point. Yeah, Ruben, actually, you said it to me. I think it was last year. We have to remember that if I'm a sommelier and a new wine comes to the market, AI is not going to tell me how that wine tasted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
That's
the best analogy still.
It's still the best analogy. The AI cannot tell me how that wine tastes. And it's the same with our customers. Those experiences are created by humans. And again, back to the staffing, because I think it's a really important topic. If you're talking to your staff about that topic and encouraging them to become the experts in that relationship, the customer's going to get a much better outcome and the business is going to get a much better outcome. And it removes the taboo of the conversation as well. So, yeah, thanks, Ruben.
Maybe on that wine thing, there's also another side to it, which I always find important, is also that we need to learn to make more use of our own big data, okay, for training these LLMs. Because the point is just we have replied to thousands of emails of certain requests from customers, and we have done it well, we have done it not so well, and we can really make, I always talk about supercharging your employees. You can really make things better, okay? You can learn from past experience, and we have all this data, our mailboxes are full, our IT supervisors are sending messages around that they have to archive every other day, right? But we're not really making use of that knowledge that is already there, and of that historic knowledge. Huh?
Yeah, very good.
Thank you both. So the theme, I guess, is overarchingly educate yourself, don't be afraid, see it as a way that I can not only do what I'm doing better, but then take it to that next level. I can take that higher level thinking, which will lead into our next conversation in part 2. How can I, as a human, show myself as the ultimate differentiator against the competition, right? Very insightful as always, both of you. Thank you very much. We will have part 2 coming out next.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Ruben.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. Very nice.
Yeah.